So I'm here with Mick Housby and his favorite tractor. You say it's your favorite of all of them you've had?
Yeah.
A 2000 model 7810. She's a.
Right.
Is that a power shift?
Power shift.
Yep. And you bought her new?
Brand new.
Okay. So back then you were still milking cows though.
Right. Yeah, I bought 7800 when they came out, and that was a joke with the transmission in them. So as soon as one of these came available, I traded for it because the 7800 just had a lot of transmission problems. So
Yeah, it seems like the 7800s aren't as loved as the 10s.
well, that's why, that what it boiled down to, what I found out and went to meetings and stuff was, they said, the company said the oil holes in the transmission weren't big enough to return the oil. I don't know how to explain it, but that was a factory when they introduced that transmission. That was something that they did wrong.
Okay. Yeah, because that was the 19 speed.
Yeah.
When they went from a 15 speed to the 19 speed.
Yeah, just like this one. But that, I know on mine they changed the computer at least 6 times in a couple of years that I had it. So, but that's what it would do. I had 2 barn cleaners, and I back it around, put it under the first one, and go to move it, it wouldn't move. So, I mean, there's nothing you could do but call John Deere and come out and change the computer on it most of the time. But
well, and yeah, so let's go back. You've dairy farmed most of your whole life.
yep, my dad had 35 cows. Well, he rented farms, one for each one of my uncles, and I always told him you paid for them, and now you paid for their farms, you should buy one of your own. And of course, he went through the Depression. He was terrible about borrowing money. So anyway, he bought this farm in 1951 right here down the road, and he had 35 cows. So I graduated in 1959, and I worked for him for about 2 years, and then he was a diabetic, lost a leg, so he was pretty well done farming. He could run the tractor, but that was about it. And so I bought it from him in 1962. So then in 72, I went to 60 cows. And I don't remember, but I wound up with 100 there in about, I don't know what year. It wasn't that long. They never went over 100. That was enough. So.
Yeah, and you have an L-shaped barn.
Yep.
So was it 2 separate pipelines, or did you...
No, it was all one, but it should have been 2. And the other mistake I made, didn't know it, I put in a 3-inch. Well, a 3-inch takes a lot more water to wash than a 2.5.
Yep.
It's unbelievable, and that's where I got into problems with the pipeline. But
so you'd have problems with bacteria count being too high.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that, but that hot water expense is massive.
It was 120 feet the one way, and it was 80 feet the other way. But then we wound up and put in 2, what did they call them, surges? They sent the water around out of the washers that would just blast it.
Okay.
So when we washed them, it would go, we hooked it up so it was separately, then like you're saying, in the back part there. And then we didn't have any more problems. But Yeah, that part of the barn was on there. We used it for young stock, and I just converted it over. Well, then I'd bought this farm here, and that was a pig barn over there. So I moved the young stock to there and put all cows in. So
Yeah. And built some silos.
just had the 170 footer, and then I went to high moisture corn. I ground feed for quite a few years, but how I ever did it alone, I don't know. But I always said when I made the most money, I had 80 cows and the kids were small, and then as the boy got older, wanted more money, so we went to the 100. But I ground feed for a long time, but then we put the Harvestore up. I don't remember what year that was, and went to high moisture. That saved a lot of work.
Was that built by Brave?
Yeah,
So it was a new Harvestore then.
yeah, that was a brand new one. A 20 by 50, and then with 100 cows, I'd run out of corn about a month. So then I put 10 feet on it, made it a 20 by 60. So then I had plenty of corn.
Yeah. Yeah, that on a silo, people don't realize that what 10 feet more does because you pack.
Yeah.
There's way more feed from that extra 10 feet.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
It's kind of like on a top unloader, you'd fill a silo, and the first half of the silo would go in a quarter of the time.
Yeah.
It
really.
goes over twice as fast.
Yep.
So, but do you remember what that Harvestore cost? Because a corn unit was probably cheaper than a haylage unit, right?
Well, it was just the unloader was cheaper. When back then they had it wasn't a sweep arm, it was a stationary auger. And then when you got down to the last, probably ring or so, you unbolted that, and then that would go around, and that's how you emptied it. But it never ran until then. It was always bolted solid. So they weren't very expensive at all when they went to the sweep auger, which we put in eventually, and then they were putting as high as the haylage one, but the first ones were quite reasonable. But.
Yeah. Well, and going back to 1962 when you started, remember you told me one time it's pretty fascinating because your era of farmer has seen more changes than probably most. Because the first year you were farming on your own, you actually planted corn with horses yet, didn't you?
Yeah, my dad loved his horses, and we planted corn with the horses on that farm probably for 3 or 4 years, and then, well, I guess when the biggest change came is when I went to 60 cows. I couldn't get a spreader big enough to hold it, and being alone, I couldn't make 2 trips, and he wasn't able to give up on the spreader and drive the horses anymore. So I bought a tractor spreader, and so I could just make 1 trip, and time was a big thing when you had cows,
So you were milking 60 cows and hauling manure with horses?
Well, the horses went when I went to 60 cows.
Oh, okay.
That's when I bought this.
Because that was a hell of 60 cows at that time was a lot of cows.
Yeah. And at that time, it was before the Amish hadn't really gotten around here, and so it was hard to get horse equipment anymore even, so that was another reason. But they just didn't make a spreader big enough to hold 60 cows. So.
Were you milking with with buckets at that time?
I started out with a step saver, and I think 56 I put the pipeline in.
Okay.
1956, if I remember right, we put the pipeline in. But otherwise, we had what they called a step saver. I don't know if you were ever.
Yep. Oh yeah. But you just got a hose that runs to the bulk tank.
Yep.
What kind of milking equipment? I mean, because you were close to Steiner Surge, right?
Yeah, we had surge buckets, but then when I went with the pipeline, what was that? Ralph Thompson sold them out of Baldwin there.
Oh, Bomatic.
Bomatic, yep.
Okay.
And I stayed with Bomatic till the end. So
Yeah, a pipeline was a huge savings
yeah,
of labor and time but if you were going to haul manure with the horses up until, so that was so you were hauling with manure into the 60s, but so every morning you'd have to hitch them up or harness them, and
yep.
how long would that take?
Oh, no, it wasn't that bad to hook them up. Probably 20 minutes or so. Just put the collar on, the harness on them, and they were good. You led one out and went and got the other one and hooked them up. It wasn't probably half an hour you had them ready to go. And yeah, they were.
But compared to jumping on that tractor right there and hitting the key, a half an hour a day over, that adds up.
Well, the only nice thing about the horses, when you want them to move, you could just tell them to get up, they'd go a little ways, and so you didn't have to get on the spreader like the tractor you had to get into. So
yeah,
that was one advantage.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, nothing like, but it just, the size and everything, and just didn't have the time, and I don't know. I liked the horses too, but you had to make a decision, so I did.
Okay, so back to tractors then. At the time, when did you guys get your first tractor then?
We had SC cases, and my dad had an SC case and a DC case, and then he bought a 300. That was probably the newer. When the case went to 3 and 400s, that's the only two models they made. And he bought the 300. So when I bought the farm, I got an SC and a 300. And I run them, I want to say probably about 3 or 4 years. I was going to call my brother because he was plowing with that 300 when she split the big ring gear in the rear end. Of course, I was pulling 3 bottoms with it. I was doing more with it than what I should have been. And then I traded that for a 730 case with, that was 60 horse. And no 3-point, was diesel. No cab. $4,600.
It didn't have a cab, but it was still the Comfort King, right?
Comfort King, yeah. Yeah. That was a good tractor, though. I wouldn't take nothing away from it. But
well, that'd been a 4-cylinder, right? The 730?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were big bore, big stroke, but only 4-cylinder, right?
Right, yeah.
How was that? So was that the first diesel then?
Yep, that was the first diesel I had. I think diesel was what, 30 or 40 cents a gallon then?
Right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, it was cheaper than gasoline, and that got better fuel economy.
Yeah, it did.
But you probably weren't spreading manure with that in the winter. Did you park it for the winter, or did you use it?
I used that for a couple of years, but then I traded that 300 off for a 970, but there again, it had some hours on it, and I can't remember just how many horse that was.
They're pretty near 100,
That's
aren't
what
they?
I was thinking. It was either 97 or 100, something like that. And that had a power shift, which my wife loved to drive on the baler and stuff. And
Was that a Desert Sunset one or a white one?
it was a white one.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Yeah. No, it wasn't either. You're right. It was the Desert. It was the desert, both of them, the 732. Neither one of them were white. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and we should say the reason you had all these case tractors is Lapine implement, right?
Yep. Yep. It was. Well, I remember as a kid when he started. He worked for the Case Deere in Durand, and he started in Menominee. In the back of it was a box factory, and he just had a small shop. And I remember when he started, but I don't remember the year. Seemed like it was. I better not say, but anyway, that's where he gives some awful good deals, but that's what I grew up with was Case. But then when he kind of got in trouble as a dealer and wasn't tending to what he should, and got done haying, the cable and the power shift had went out of the 970, and I took that in, and then my son, who was just getting into driving tractor good, we had one of those John Deere basket rakes, if you turn too short, you could take the stem out of the rear tractor on the tire. It was a tricycle with a third wheel on it. And he did that, and so the guy from Churchill Tire come out that time, and they were swamped and we were swamped, and he says, I've done this before, so he somehow jammed something in there to hold it, but he says, get it in as soon as you can, but we finished haying with it that day. But my 970 was in the shop, so I took that one down, and the starter had went to put on the 730 at the time, so you could pull it, and start it. It was a straight transmission, and so I took it into the tire shop, called Lapine, and says, will you pick that up? They got the tire fixed and sitting in the street running. Could you run down there, which was probably only, I don't know, half a mile, maybe a mile at the most, and pick it up, save me going into town? Yeah, no problem. Well, the guy at the tire shop called me 3 hours later, and he says, Mick, your tractor's still sitting here running. So, a little short-tempered as I am at times, I drove in and went out and seen what was wrong, and here they were cleaning the yard up, sorting out junk, and just cleaning the yard up out behind the building. And I said to the mechanic, did you ever get that 970 fixed? No, Mick, he said I didn't. You got to talk to Tom, so I did. He made the remark that, you don't need them tractors. I said, well, I got to haul manure every day. I said, and all I got's that SC. And so from there, I went down to John Deere's shop, and that's how I got into John Deere's. A guy by the name of Doug Weber, who was young, and that was just before they moved toward on.
Oh, this was in the downtown by the laundromat or whatever, right?
And I said, can you fix that starter on that tractor? And he said, you go get it. I'll fix it on one condition. What's that? You take a John Deere home. You got to take a John Deere home and try it. Otherwise, I won't fix it. And he's laughing, And I said, okay. So that's when they bought or started, I think, the 40 or the 30 series, I believe, was coming out then.
Yep.
Could have been out a while, I don't know, but
with maybe 70, fall of 72, I think they introduced them. So like 73 model year, probably was the first of them.
So I traded the 730 for a new 4030. In fact, they took me with a loader on it. Ron Buss was the trucker. You got to go to Waterloo with me and see the factory, and we'll bring that tractor back. So later on, I traded the 970 for a 4430. So
that 4030, would that have been a open station, or did that have a cab?
That was open station. The first John Deere's I bought had roll guard, a permanent roll guard on them, with a roof in.
Yep.
No windows, but it was like a cab, only with.
Yeah, 4-post.
I never wanted a cab. I was one of them guys that I got stigmatism, and I didn't like the windshields. But then as time went on, it was a cold, miserable winter, and I traded again I didn't like the 30 series, especially when they introduced the 40 series, and that was when I got my first cab. Because I called my buddy, and it was colder than hillbilly hell in January, and I said, I'm hauling manure with my vest on today. I said, he says, Christ, aren't you cold? I said, no, I got a cab now. You got a cab? So that's where I got introduced to cabs, and I've had one ever since. Wouldn't be without them now. So.
Well, that 4430 though, so the 4430 was a 4-post then too.
Yeah.
But that was a big horse.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't sell a lot of 4430s around here. That was a pretty big tractor.
Yeah.
So how many cows were you milking then?
About 80.
So yeah, that was big. That was pretty big.
Yeah.
So then were you running a lot of Deere equipment then too? Was your chopper Deere, or?
Yeah.
Did you have a 3800 or something?
Yeah, we did. Then we went to, in fact, my cousin who taught school right next to me, he had a smaller Gale chopper, and he says, Mick, I'm going to buy a chopper. I had 2 wagons and a blower. Let's work together. You put your tractor on. All he had was some older Internationals that were in that Gale chopper. I said, I won't hook on to it. Why? Because I said there won't be nothing left of it. And he said, all right, then I'll buy a new chopper. So he bought a 3950 John Deere chopper. And that was about right for horsepower and everything. That's just in the hills and stuff. It would work it pretty good.
So did you trade the 4430 in on a 4440?
As soon as they came out.
So in 78.
The problem I had with the 30 series was if you walk by them with an ice cream cone in the middle of summer, they wouldn't start, So
Yep.
Other than that, they run good, and like that 4030, I had a loader on it. Of course, if it snowed, I didn't have a good shop to put it in. It wouldn't start. You plugged it in, but it was a problem with them. So, yeah, I bought the 40 series whenever they first came out. And
That was the 4030 and the 4430, were they quad ranges or?
power shifts, I believe.
Okay.
15 speeds, yep.
Boy, a 4030 open station power shift is a pretty valuable tractor today, I would think. It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Because most of them, I think, were synchros or maybe quads.
Yeah.
Because power shift was it cost a few bucks to get a power shift.
Yeah.
But
when I bought the 4040, they were the 8-speed synchro. But
okay. So what do you think of that 4440? That's my favorite tractor all time.
Yeah.
4440.
Yeah. No, that was a good tractor. I think I bought the front wheel assist then too.
It'd been hydraulic on the 40 series. Mechanical didn't come out until the 50 series.
Then it was the 50 series. Yeah. No, I never had the hydraulic one.
Okay.
It was the 50 series, and yeah, that's right, because it was I had a 5-bottom plow that I pulled, and it was in the hills, was hard to keep the front end down, So when I bought the front end assist, that took care of that. So.
Well, them 4440s were about as strong as.
Yeah.
I mean,
They were good. They were really good.
Pull a lot harder than that 4430, I would
Yep.
think. And then you bought a 4450 with mechanical front.
Yep.
That's early 80s. So in the 70s, I'm betting you were making pretty good money with 80 cows.
Yep.
And then suddenly early 80s comes around and it got expensive to be farming, didn't it?
Yeah. There was an area or time there that this Doug Weber I'm talking about, I had 4240s, and I think I traded as much as 4 to 5 times in 2-3 years there. We had an agreement that I put 200 hours on them, and I don't know why he could sell them with 200 hours, but he couldn't sell them brand new. Whether that just John Deere would discount them along with him or what the deal was, but I had to use John Deere oil, and I know I traded at least 3 times there in 2 years, them 4240s.
Huh. What'd you think of 4240? Because they were
good, but they were hard on fuel.
Yeah, because I had a 4240 and I liked that tractor, but it'd do all the work of a 4440, but about a gear slower.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were pretty thirsty if you're going to work them hard.
Yeah, I remember Gene Slusher was in there at that time. He was a brother-in-law to Doug. Anyway, he was a great guy to figure stuff out. And they had the Nebraska test then, you know.
Yep.
And I had my son on that 4240, and we rented quite a bit of land then. And I would stay at milk and plant most of the night, you know. And I started him in the morning like 4:30 with that. He'd been home and filled up the second time, and I'm going to plant. This is like 6:30 at night, and I meet him coming home without the disc. And I said, what happened? I'm out of fuel. So I'm telling Gene Slusher this, and I said, that thing takes better than 8 gallons an hour. No, the Nebraska test is only takes 7 point something. And I says, well, the clock don't lie, you know, but it was like you say, it was a good tractor, but they got a little thirsty. And they didn't have a big enough tank on them either.
Yeah, I think a 4440, I think it was like 65 gallons, and I think a 42 was only like 45 maybe or something.
And the 44, you could figure 60 acres, and then you better be heading for home on the plow, because the gauge would be flashing time you got home if you planted 60 or plowed 65 acres with it. You could set your clock by that. I mean, that's about what she took. So.
Huh. And then, so when the 80s kind of rolls around, had you kind of done the expansion well before that?
Yeah.
So interest probably wasn't as bad for you.
No. Well, I think John Deere at that time had a variable. You know, went with whatever the government was. It was a point or two left, so it wasn't all that bad, you know. But
okay.
And I only went so far on them. I always figured whatever I bought, couldn't borrow any more than if I had to sell tomorrow, I could get my money out of it. So that's what I gauged my buy-in on was.
Yep.
You know. But yeah, it was good times. I mean, it was, I don't know. I thought they were all good times pretty much. There was times when you wondered why you were doing it, but that's with anything, I think.
Well, if you were renting a bunch of land too, was that just to feed steers, or were you raising some cash crop too?
Yeah, we always did a little cash cropping, and But with 100 cows, and we probably run 40, 50 steers, finished them out, Holstein steers. So.
Okay. Oh, you were keeping all your bull calves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's enough to do then. And
Yeah, I never had a hired man. Of course, my kids were getting big enough then, and they were good about feeding the calves and stuff. But the mornings were tough. They all had to go to school, but
your wife helped you quite a bit on the farm too, didn't she?
yeah, when we got married, her agreement was that with her folks was that she had to go to beauty school. And so she went through that, got her managers, and oh, hell, our son was born. We were married in 60. He was born the following November. We didn't have to get married, so it was after. Yeah, I think is it November 19th he was born. But anyway, and then the other two girls were 4 years apart, so don't ask me how that got, but it's easier to tell their age now anyway.
Yeah.
They're all 4 years apart. So. But anyway, yeah, at night they were good, but she'd get them on the bus in the morning and come down and help me with the milk house and stuff. But and then when we baled a lot of hay. Oh, what year? I think that was 73 that I bought the kicker baler, first kicker baler. Otherwise, I loaded them all.
So would
And,
she drive the tractor
yep,
and you'd
yep. She only worked, Lynn was the second one, so that would have been, oh, God damn it, 6 years. When she was born, she went to work when she was pregnant with her, she went to working 3 days a week. And after she was born, she says, I'm done working. I'm not going to raise kids and work. So she was done working, and so that's when she helped me. She wouldn't run the chopper or the baler, but she would disc or stuff like that because she didn't want nothing to do with mechanical, something running, And so, that's why when she'd unload the bales, she could kill anybody in the mow, 2 or 3 guys. It was, if the elevator putting it up there would stand it, they'd be bumper to bumper. And she loved it. She just loved to unload bales, which I was glad, it was no.
But would she unload chopper boxes?
No.
So would you chop alone?
Well, we worked together.
Oh.
My uncle had a hired man, so then Kenny was old enough. He really, when he got old enough, I think I put that silo up at 2070 in 1970. So if he was born in 61, he would have been about 11 years old, and we come out of the barn. I hadn't filled it yet. And we're done milking, and my wife says, well, where's Kenny? And I says, he's up there, and she starts screaming, and I said, don't say a word. I hated to climb. I just hated the height.
Yeah.
And he was going up that silo, and he got up to the top, and I said, how you doing? Good, he says, it's really beautiful up here, and well, then you better come down. And so he did from then on, he did the silo climbing outside. I go up the inside, but he did the outside. And then he unloaded after that, so.
Okay. Was that, so you were baling most of your hay. When did you start doing haylage then? Somewhere in there?
We filled it with corn silage for, I would say, 4, maybe 5, 6 years. I should have wrote it down, but then we went we went to haylage and put the harvester up. Why? Then we went to haylage and still baled a lot, but
Well, it seems like the doing haylage really helped to put up better hay, because to try and get first crop dry would just then screw up the whole summer.
oh yeah.
Because
But we always chopped the first crop then, see,
Yep.
when we went to haylage, and then we'd refill on the third crop, so we basically baled all the second crop and maybe some of the later first crop, but yeah.
well, yeah,
My son used to say, I hope to hell it snows pretty soon, so you got to quit making hay. So
but you always wanted to have plenty of hay around for a dairy,
yeah,
because that's a bad deal when but that making hay you had first, second, and third crop, but you never, you just kind of kept making hay all summer.
Yeah.
It never ended.
yeah. There was one year we had the corn all done, and it was beautiful, new seeding, and it even started to blossom, and it had froze. So this youngest daughter had never run a disc bind or hay bind, whatever we had, and I made 3 rounds, 4 rounds, so she didn't have to cut on the ends, And I says, "You cut. I'm going to bale this." And we baled it, and it was no juice in it. But oh my God, we didn't have room in the barn. We left them on the wagons and fed them off the wagons, and mixed it in. But that was beautiful stuff. But there's only one time in my life that I ever ate it like that.
Yeah, bet the cows like that.
But I think then back, we had better weather than what we got now. I don't think, you got 2 weeks sometimes of dry weather. And we're now, hell, we're lucky if we get 3 days.
Yeah. Well, this year has been, difficult.
Yeah.
Which I'm willing to bet over the years, a dry year being down in the valley like this was a lot better for you than a wet year.
I think it was 70, I believe, or was it 70? One of those years was a really dry year. And I sold corn to some neighbors because that wasn't a lot. But I always remember that spring we pastured the cows during the day. And when it come to haying, I think I had 14 bales of hay left in the barn. And that's about the least I ever had in my life. But
Yeah.
but that was one of the driest years that I ever remember. So.
How was 88 for you?
Well, I think 88's when I learned my lesson about booking contracted corn. I contracted quite a bit, and it got dry, and it was corn right here by my house. And you go to bed, and you could smell that corn was dry. And I thought, oh, I contracted all that corn. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
That was the last year I over-contracted, but we had enough to fill it, luckily, but yeah.
Where were you selling that at then?
I think Elmwood.
Okay, that was through Countryside or Grand Co-ops or whatever.
No, what did they call it? Lobbs had that one down there. Somebody else had it before him, but it was a guy by the name of Bob Lobbs had it. All the while I sold to him, and they'd truck it to Winona or Red Wing mostly.
Oh, yep.
He didn't have no extra storage or anything for it. But,
Well, yeah, because a farmer you couldn't just go to Red Wing and sell corn at one time.
No.
You had to be a dealer.
Right. Yeah.
So, when did you first grow soybeans?
Well, when the cows went, I think this is the 7th year we've had beans.
Okay.
Before that, we always rotated with hay, you know, we had all the cows, so I never.
Yeah, a lot of older dairy farmers that would cash crop some wouldn't grow beans just because they said if we get a bad year and I need feed, I can't feed the beans.
Yeah.
Which some guys used to roast their beans, but nowadays the beans are worth too much money to do that.
Yeah.
You're better to sell the beans and then buy meal, you know. But that was a big change in there. And you said you got your first kicker baler in '73. Was that a 336 with a 30 kicker?
Yep.
Boy, there was every other baler around was a 336 at one time.
Yeah. Then I bought a 12-foot disc vine, and I was having trouble with that. The only complaint I had about it was tying, and it was, if everything was good, they were a hell of a baler, but if it wasn't, they were a little touchy. And so then I bought they had what they called a 348.
Yep.
And that's what the guy from John Deere said, he needs a bigger baler. But that didn't make any difference. But so then I got into, I don't know how many years there, wasn't too many, and we got into straw, and my patience and things aren't the best. Anyway, wouldn't tie straw. And my brother-in-law just bought a New Holland, and he says, that'll tie anything. So I called New Holland, and I just said, if it'll tie this straw, I said, I'll buy it. They brought it out, and it did. It put the John Deere to shame as far as tying. So then I had New Holland small square baler since. But
how often did you keep one? Because if you were baling a lot, I bet you'd.
Well, when I first started out, you can believe this or not, but Case had what they called a 200. They didn't have a decent kicker. They never did have a decent kicker. But that was a small baler, but it would eat hay and it would tie. And I traded with Lapine about every year.
Okay.
For $1,400. But I didn't have time to fix anything, you know. So that's what I did I bet I had 3-4 of them, and that's when I went to the kicker. I went to John Deere with it. You know,
Yep. Yeah, and when the disc vines came out, that was a big difference because boy, you could.
Especially here in the valley, you know, you always, I don't care, you had the best alfalfa, but there'd always be some undergrowth that just cut hard. And hay binds in the mornings when it was damp, when I had to cut, you know, so I could bale or whatever in the afternoons. After it dried off, they were a different machine. So when the disc binds come out, I got one of the first ones for that reason. And
what kind was that?
that was a New Holland, I believe. I think they had it before Deere did, if I remember right, because I traded my Deere disc bind for it. I kind of think that New Holland had the disc bind before Deere did, I believe. But
I think so. And then they had those. Well, they had that deal with the cutter bar was all the same. All the gears were the same. So if you broke something, you wrecked everything. But boy, it was something else when they came out versus a hay bind. You know, you'd go so much faster.
You never plugged, you know. Where the hay bind, it seemed like you were always backing up and unplugging it, you know.
Yeah.
But when we had a hay on the hills or something, it was a different story. But in these valleys, why it really cut hard, especially when it was wet. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So farming in the valley like that, did it take longer to dry crops, or, I mean, were the days shorter in the valley than they were up on top of a hill?
I had an old neighbor, what's his last name? Weber was his last name. He sold Pfizer corn. And he said, if I get a test plot, I like it in the valleys because the valley holds the heat longer at night.
Really?
And he said that corn will ripen for a test plot. He said it would just show the rest of them up. So I don't know. I never noticed any difference. My biggest fear was freezing.
Frost will settle in low.
Yeah, I'll freeze, in the valley and before it does on the hills right here. And I seen it freeze on the 8th of June. And as the corn went up the hill, it was right over across from here on the creek there. Probably halfway, and it's not that much of a grade. But it froze it really hard, killed it.
Huh.
But it came back.
Really?
I thought it was done for, and I left it alone, and it looked like it was all done. And I was picking corn then, and in the fall when I picked it, you couldn't tell the difference.
Was that 92 maybe? Because we had a Father's Day frost that, I remember guys.
That might have been. It might have been because, the boy was old enough, the kids were old enough. I bet it was because we took a drive up north and stayed overnight. And then they called and said that we had frost here in the yard, And so I came home and then I watched it or looked the stuff over, and it wasn't a lot of it, but just that one field that really, I don't know why that one field was, but
Yeah, and is in the fall, does it freeze here a little bit sooner than it does up on top of the hill?
oh yeah, a lot of times it does. But I've been a stickler about getting it in the ground, And,
and I've argued with people that are from, Illinois or Indiana or something like that. And if it's fit, I always say if it's fit and it's past the 15th of April, I'm going to plant. Because the sooner we get it in the ground, the better it yields. It seems like here.
I would argue a little bit with you there. Maybe now, like this year, we started on the 22nd of April, but I did plant some corn. It's been quite a few years ago on the 20th of April, and then it snowed, and it got cold, and then it snowed, and that kind of stayed behind the rest of it. So I've always kind of been waiting until like the 24th. But this year, I know we moved it up a couple days, but I didn't want it to be out of the ground, let's say before like the first week in May, because I was afraid of it freezing off, but yeah.
Well, I'm glad this year, the stuff that I did plant in April, because the April planted, I think we're going to be right down to, it's going to take every bit of season that we can, the fall will give us.
The corn that was planted before, then we got that, a week or 10 days there in May that you couldn't do anything.
Yep.
But everything that was planted when you drove through the country before that really looks a lot better than anything planted after that. So.
Yeah, I kind of noticed. So I finished planting corn around the 12th, 13th of May, maybe, something like that. And I planted over half of it early in April. And the stuff that was planted later, at first you thought it looked real good because it seemed like the color was a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then I top dress and some stuff I wide drop and that, you did it later because it was behind. So it seemed like it was greener and the corn was taller. And I go start picking ears and yeah, it's taller, but there's 2 less rows of kernels on everything.
Is there?
Yeah, that was planted a little bit later. So, and the first planted stuff is denting, and the other stuff has got a long, there's a lot of time to get that done, you know.
I've got spots that, to the wet weather, that are held back, and now they've come on, like you say, but they're not going to be good. I don't think that's so.
No. Yeah, it's setting the dryer is just going to be a pain this year
Yeah.
because it's going to be, you can sample it here and think you're right, and then it's going to hit some of that wet stuff, and you know, but
mine out of I don't know, 500 acres, whatever. I'd probably say I got 50. The rest of it, I wouldn't even worry about the dryer. But
yep. Yeah. So before you had the harvesters then, were you picking corn?
oh yeah,
So did you have Baling cribs or round cribs and stuff?
I had 4 round cribs, tall ones in a row, and then I had a couple singles of them, plus a couple old cribs, and that was all work. But my wife would unload corn for me, though. She was pretty good at that. But
What did you have for a picker?
I had 2-row, no idea. I had 2-row John Deere eventually, but I started out with a 2-row. Well, a 1-row I always had, and then I went to a 2-row new idea, and then eventually I bought a 2-row John Deere.
A 300 and
Yeah.
And those wouldn't shell because they had a better head, but then they wouldn't husk as good as the new idea, right, or something.
Yeah, they all said that, but I don't know. It seemed like I couldn't tell that much difference between the two. But
Where'd you get the new idea from then? Did you get that from Durand or?
I'm trying to think. There was many dealers then, that.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure John Deere didn't sell New Idea at that time.
Okay, I know they did at one point, but.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I think the 1-row I bought used someplace, maybe on an auction. And, well, the first one picker I ever worked around was the Woods Brothers. Did you ever see one of them?
I've heard of them. They were ground driven, weren't they, or something?
No, but they were slow. They did a good job. But I don't. Neighbor had like a 300 International, and boy, he didn't move very fast with that. In fact, at that time, my brother and I could shovel it into a corn crib at that time. So you could keep up that way even with them. But
Had barge boxes that didn't
yeah,
raise and.
yeah.
So did you go to hydraulic hoist or did you have a mechanical hoist to pick them up?
I think we went to the gravity boxes, and then we went to elevator, right.
Okay.
Whenever I went to a bigger picker, or my own picker.
Did you have an old like Kiwani or Owatonna elevator to fill that?
I think I had a John Deere.
Oh, really?
Pretty sure I did.
PTO driver.
Yeah.
Yep. Boy, everything about picking corn and filling cribs is dangerous, wasn't there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I always said there's every time you'll see an older farmer that's missing a few fingers, it's like, it was a new idea or a Deere picker.
I lost a glove once, but that's the closest I ever came to it.
How'd that happen? Would they just plug the head up with foxtail and stuff? Or?
A husking bed.
Oh, it was a husking bed.
Especially if you got a little snow or trash, too much trash in there, it wouldn't move the corn through. So you took your hand and you give it a push. Well, what was there? There was, some of them were 8 rolls, some of them were 12 rolls.
Right? They had a 12 roll.
I think that's what they were, but that wasn't big enough. The 8 weren't big enough for the 2 rows.
So that's how, because I just assumed back then it must have been the head that was plugging up or gathering chains, because the corn was dirtier back then
Yeah,
than it is today.
yeah.
But that's what it was. It was the husking bed that was.
Well, that's the way I always said. I never knew anybody. I'm sure somebody got into the head at one time or other, but yeah. But the husking bed was the dangerous one. That
God, there was a lot of farmers that were
Oh,
missing
yeah.
fingers.
yeah. And then I knew of one or two that stumbled on the stocks, and then they fell and got a hand in the head and stuff. Because the stocks were so long, they weren't ground up
Yep.
like they are today.
Yeah, especially on the new idea because it didn't have the stripper plates.
Yeah,
Because a 300 would almost make it look like a combine.
yeah.
But that was something that everybody picked, and then one day just nobody picked corn again ever.
Yeah, I bought my first combine was a little John Deere 2-row. What the hell was the number on that?
3,300.
3,300, and just to open the fields up and stuff. And well, that didn't last long. Pretty soon I was combining, but
Well, once you got the Harvestore, then
yeah.
So what'd you run for combines then? Because you went Deere tractors, but you've had some red combines, right?
Well, I had all Deere. I had that 3,300, and I bought a 4,400, and then I had a 4,420. That was a good machine. But then Deere come with that godforsaken thing that was built in Germany, a 420,
4425. Yeah.
That was the biggest piece of shit. That's the only time I remember I had that thing 3 years. And I was not happy with it. And my wife said, "My God, man, why don't you trade that headache off?" Well, I went to town and I went over to John Deere, and Gene Slusher Doug was out of there then, and Gene was in there, and that's when they were coming with, would have been the 90s,
Oh, yeah.
and the 66. They weren't building the 66s anymore, but there was some around with a couple hundred hours on them.
So like the 94, 9500.
There you go. They were going into that series, but you could still get a
6620 or.
yeah. And we went and sat in his office. We found 3 of them that day, and we agreed on trading this headache of a 4425 off. And we agreed on 20,000, and I left there, had to go home and milk, and one guy couldn't get a hold of, the other guy was out with both of them were going to call him, that couldn't, they had to go back to the office and check what they had into the machine, or something. And so when I left there, I was going to own one of the 2.
Yep.
And I come out from milking, and it was Roy Hardy was a salesman. And I come out of the milk house, and he's shaking his head. He says, "Mick, I know what you're going to tell me before I open my mouth." Well, I said, "That's pretty hard to do." I said, "What's up?" Gene sent me out and said he's got to have $5,000 more. And I said, "Well, you tell him to stick it up his ass." He says, "He said it before I did." So that's what I bought my first case. I'd go in there and I'd tell him, "I just spent this much on the combine parts out there. You could have had that. You'd have had that 5,000 back." So I think he regretted it for quite a while after that. But I stayed with case from there on. So.
Was that like a 1640 then that you bought?
Yeah. No, that was a 16. No, it was a 2330. But that wasn't big enough. It had a 4-row head on it with 4 rows in it. And so I went back. I run it 1 year, and Greg always said, if you're not happy, I'll trade you back out of it, you know, give you what you paid for it. And they had a 23, no, it wasn't a 23.
21?
21,
44.
40. So I traded for that, and it was a different night and day, a lot more capacity, and
Yep.
handled the 4-row head good. And I complained a little bit about the power, and back then, you know, they could turn the pump.
Yeah.
So they tickled the pump a little, and I was real happy with that.
So you must have had a 1620, maybe. Would that have been the first one you had?
I don't think so. I think they were 21s,
Okay.
both of them that I had,
Okay.
because then they came with the 23 whatever after that, and
Yep.
I traded for one of them eventually. In fact, I still got one.
Yeah. And the red combines have been. Did you like going to the rotary after?
I did. I remember taking corn into Elmwood at that time, and I got more compliments on it. Was the cleanest corn that they'd have, you know. So.
Oh, really?
But nobody else had a rotary at that time, you know, to speak of it.
So did Greg try and Greg was Tom's son.
Fun, yep.
So, you know, if it's the 90s and you're you got you know, you're buying a new red combine, was he trying to get you to bring a Magnum out here?
He brought one out, and a couple times he brought them out, but he'd throw me a price and call him back, and he'd never call me back. So I just kept on a truck, and I never pushed it that hard. And so.
Well, and after that 4450, because you had a 4450 with front wheel assist, then you had a 4455, didn't you?
Yep, front wheel assist.
And now those are probably, well, they're almost one of the biggest collectible Deeres right now. I mean, people love them 4455s. I had two, mine were two-wheel drive, but how'd you like the 4455?
Oh, I loved it. And why I ever traded for that so-called, we just talked about,
7800?
7800. Man, if I could have done that one over again, but that was what I don't know if they made them 5 years. I don't think they did. I think they only made them like 3.
Yeah, because they came 93, 94, 95, and then 90. I think some are 96s, because technically the first 7810s were like a 97, right?
Yep.
And so then you had a lot of problems with that 7800.
Yep.
Did Deere help you out with the 7810? Did they treat you right?
He knew I was about done with John Deere if they weren't going to do nothing. So they had John Deere days then.
Oh, yeah.
And when I walked in, he says, Mick, come here. And there was one sitting there like this, you know, with the hood up and stuff. And I said, well, you better get your pencil out, because I'm going to have one, I said. So, and if that don't work out, I said, I know I'm going to be done with Deere. And so I traded for these then.
And you really, a lot better tractor.
Yeah. I think we had 3 of these. I think this is the 3rd one that we bought. 'Cause we had the other one is a 97, but I had one before that. So I don't remember, or did I have one in between? This is a 2000. But I think this is the 3rd one that I had.
So you always had new tractors, and then this is as new as it got then for.
Yep, that one you're leaning on there is a 2003, and I think the other 74 two-wheel drive out there is 2001.
Okay.
But this had come from the co-op, had 300 hours on it, and that one out there came from a different dealer. I had a 7400 before that, and I just wanted to update it. And
Was the 7400 an okay tractor?
they were okay. This seems like this one. They say it's only 10 horse more, but it seems like it was a lot different.
Okay.
Maybe it was more of a torqueier machine. I don't know, but
Yep. Yeah, they're, like I said, people really like them 7410s, you know.
I love that thing out there to plant with. We picked up a 7520, a used one. I bought it and never done anything like that in my life, and down at Hillsboro on an auction, and for 30,000. They were bidding on it, and it wasn't going, and my grandson was bidding, and I said, well, bid 30, and I ain't going anymore because I ain't seen it, just pictures.
Yep.
And so he says to me that night, he calls me later on, we got to go to Hillsboro. Sounds like you bought a tractor. So I said, no, you bought a tractor. You got to pay for it. Oh, I ain't got any money, so. But it's run good. A lot of little things wrong with it, but most everything he likes to do that shit. So most everything we've done, we haven't had it in the shop, so been done here. So, but the hours then after, which I was afraid of, it said it had 3,000 hours on it. I thought, when I got there, the inside of the cab didn't look the best. The appearance and everything was good. New tires on it. But it's worked out. He loves it. He's done some spraying with it, and it's front wheel assist. And he would spray everything with this 7400 out there, or 7410. And anyway, he hit a wet spot once in a while. He'd get hung up. For this one, front wheel assist, he walks right through it. So.
Do you still plant, though, with the 7410 two-wheel drive?
I was going to plant with that one, but the step was just a little higher, and this and that, and this thing has got the quad, and I was worried when I went to a 6-row corn planter, in the hills and stuff, but there hasn't been very many times that I haven't had any problem with traction, but she's weighted. There's quite a few weights on her when you look at it. But
yeah.
And then I come with 38-inch rubber like this one, and I put 42s on it. So
That's got 18442s, huh?
yeah, called John Deere, and they said, you ain't gonna hurt anything, but don't duel it. So.
Oh, I suppose. So the cow was left in, because your grandson milked cows, right?
Well, my daughter, let's see. Oh, when I turned 62, my son had been with me for 22 years. And he had like 10 cows or something in there, and that other 7010, sitting over there, 7810 was his, which when I traded away, I would give him the one that I had and trade his. So he left. I can't remember. If I remember when that mine opened in Menominee, the sand mine, he went to work there. His wife wanted a new house, didn't like the farm. She's never done nothing on the farm anyway, and 2 years later they divorced anyhow, but that's beside the point. So anyway, my daughter she had went to Eau Claire Tech, and part of their training was they had to go work on 2 or 3 farms
Yep.
for like 6 weeks or something. And all she wound up basically doing, and she loved cows and cattle, was she wound up doing dishes or taking care of kids, and that isn't what she wanted. So she had called me about 3 years prior to this and said, "Dad, can I come home?" And I said, "You can come home, Carrie, but I don't know if the pay is, we're going to figure something out there." So we did. I paid her monthly, and then we'd sell corn in the fall in her name, so she got a decent wage. But anyway, when he left, I think when I turned 67, I said, "I gotta get out of it, I guess, Carrie." And he said, "Well, I'd like to buy them." I said, "Well, you buy," the one part held 60. I said, "You buy 60, I'll keep the other ones and milk them out and sell them that way." And that's what we did. And she had them, was it 4 years? And then she came up with breast cancer out of nowhere, and that's when we sold the cows. So.
Okay. But then you kept raising steers, and
Yep.
and so you still had livestock around.
Oh yeah. Yep.
When the cows left, then did you go, boy, I should have done that sooner, or did you miss them?
Well, due to my age, I don't get me wrong. I got in an argument this last weekend with a guy that told me that anybody that milked cows and didn't have any brains, and that didn't settle with me, because I wouldn't be where I am today without them cows. And I like my cows, and I took good care of them, and they milked. I made money from my cows. So.
Yep.
So yes and no. It was. People say, "What'd you miss most?" I said, "The check."
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, the 80s weren't bad time for you, and that was because you were milking cows.
Yeah.
Because the milk price stayed good throughout the 80s.
Yeah, and corn wasn't the best in them years either, for the cash croppers. But everybody had cows then, so it was, I don't know, it seemed like people were happier too then, you got together more, and now you don't even know your neighbors, and it's.
Yeah, how many? I mean, to think about this neighborhood, how many people milk cows?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just crazy to think, that how few, how it went from everybody having cows to, I mean, there's hardly anybody
Yeah.
dairying.
Yeah, right here where we stand, this was 100, this is an 80, and there was another 40. This was one farm, and he had like 27 cows. And on the other side of me, that was 160. And they had like 30 some cows, so.
Yeah.
I bought both of these farms, and joined them, but that's what it was, so.
Where did you ship your milk?
Let's see, there was a cheese factory in Hatchville, where
Oh, that one?
Yep. It went there for a long time. And then when he went out, Wisconsin Co-op went there a lot of years. And then my son-in-law, who married this youngest daughter, bought a milk route, and he was hauling into, what's the next cheese factory, the first one when you turn on 128?
Oh, Katie.
He hauled in there, but that's when it started to get, farmers started to go out,
Yep.
Is that going to interfere with you? And they kind of were cutting him off new patrons and that, so it was getting harder. He loved the haul of milk.
Yep.
So they bought him out. No, then he went to, took the truck and milk and went to Wisconsin dairies. So I went with him to Wisconsin dairies. And I don't know how many years he hauled there. It wasn't too many years. And then they, same deal, they were less haulers, you know, and
Yep.
the big boys were, they were catering to if you had more than one truck. And they bought him out, treated him good. So then I went to Old Galley Cheese. And that's where we finished out.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I don't ever remember the Hatchville plant open, but you know.
Yeah. Well, it was open. It must have closed around the 70s, around 70, later 60s in there.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, that must have been pretty nice being right by your creamery and
Yeah. Best part to go in there then, and they had open vets making cheese curds.
yep.
And they'd get you, scoop you out some, you could have fresh cheese curds. But now I don't think you dare walk in there.
Well, that's when I think about milking cows. My daughter, she's, you know, her eyes got really big because they love to go to the creamery, you know, and get, you know, well, they love cheese curds, but get ice cream at the creamery and stuff. And I told her, I said, yeah, when I milk cows, I said, you could just walk right up here and you just say patron number 39, and you'd get your cheese curds. I go, you wouldn't pay for it or nothing. I said, you just walk out. She didn't realize, you know, it comes out of the milk check, but
Yeah.
but she just thought that's the greatest thing in the world. I could just walk into the creamery, you know, and you'd get cheese like that. And I go, well, there was a lot of times I didn't have any money, and that's the only way I ate was
Yeah.
cheese and butter.
Yeah. And you talk about kids that way. I remember one time when ours were small, the boy wanted something, and Aunt says, well, we haven't got any money. Well, he says, write a check. So that's all you had to do, just write a check.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, well, the dairy farm, it was always, yeah, I'll write you a check, but don't cash it until the 20th.
Yeah. Yeah. I did some custom work, but I never got burnt. Only one guy did, but he was an asshole. I shouldn't swear, but to start with. But he'd always pay me. When he wanted his oats combine, he'd come a week or so before I was ready to combine pay me for last year, you know. But then he sold it out to the kids, so he got me for 1 year, but it wasn't that big amount. But
Yeah, that custom combine, and did you do much of that, or just small grain?
small grain, and then I did quite a bit of corn for here and there, you know, guys didn't have a lot, and some didn't have room, why they'd combine it and
Okay.
haul it to Elmwood or someplace. Nobody had a dryer or anything, but
Yeah, I don't know, it seems like the custom work, you just wear your stuff out.
yeah.
But back then, you know, when you were trading them combines, they're not like today with what they cost.
No. If there was, I'd have a newer or bigger one, but this one, I can stay ahead of the dryer, so either if I go bigger, I got to fit a bigger dryer. At my age, who knows what's going to happen here, you know.
Well, you got a grandson farming, right?
Well,
So
yeah, he's doing a pretty good job.
that must be nice seeing that it's going to keep on running.
Well, there's two ways to look at it, though. There's your retirement. So
Yeah.
if they make it go keep it farming, I'll be happy. But the only thing that you've seen, and I'm sure you've seen it, when the old guy dies, there's a big auction, you know.
Yep.
And they're sitting pretty good, so.
Well, yeah, I guess if none of the kids are gonna farm, you might as well sell it, right?
Yeah.
That, you know.
Yeah, it was all, if this boy would have stayed with me, why, it was set up to, he would own 90% of it, and we had it all set up too, but what do you do?
Yeah, well, you better, if you're gonna farm, you better want to farm.
He never liked the cows. He always, and if he'd have stayed, let's say another 5 years, everything would have been paid for. Then we could have went to beef, you know. And that's what I tried to tell him. I said, you know, but he's doing what he likes. He likes to. He runs the cat and the backhoe in the pit out there. He's done that for years. But I said, I hope you got a good future ahead of you, but. Because he's 62 now, he'll be 62. So he should be thinking about his future, you know.
Yeah.
And that sand mine ain't the best as far as I'm concerned, but that's his problem.
Well, and farming went a lot different than what we thought, you know, as far as, you know, you didn't picture the small dairies going away.
No.
And you didn't think crop farming would get as big as it did.
No, I never thought you'd see me crop farming, you know. I always thought there'd be a few cows there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it just playing, I mean, it's to the people that didn't see it the way it was, it's hard to even believe how much more dairy there was around here, that it just.
And I think another big contributing factor is the younger generation wants their weekends.
Yep.
It's just the way it is there. And I don't know how they do it with new house, new cars, new side-by-sides, four-wheelers, or whatever. They all seem to have it. And take off, and a lot of them got a place up north too, so or a big camper. So,
yeah.
In my day, you never had nothing, so you know.
Yeah. And
I bought my first snowmobile in 1969 or 70, and we did a lot of that over the years during the winter, you know. But we didn't go anyplace. I mean, we rode around here, and that was it. But that was our getaway. So.
Well, I always thought snowmobiles were all right because in the wintertime you'd do chores, and then you had time.
Yep.
Where you could do that, where, you know, if you're going to do a lot of other stuff, they're just, I mean, when you're haying and,
yeah,
you know, you didn't have time to go.
No, hell no.
And I don't know that was all bad because, you know, we'll go somewhere now, you know, for a day or something and get away, and you don't have to worry about chores or nothing. But it was, I don't know, I have fond memories of the summertime, you know, where we'd make hay and do chores, and then you'd go around to Dairy Queen and get ice cream. That was,
yeah.
I had just as good of memories of that as I do anything else.
Yeah, I remember when we just had the one boy that I had a hay hoist, so I'd milk, and then I'd unload the bales in the barn, you know, and get them out off, and probably 10 o'clock at night, he'd be sleeping, and lay him in the back seat of the car, and go to the dairy or root beer stand. Then it wasn't no Dairy Queens, but root beer stand. And
Yep.
get something to eat, and come back home because we're so damn tired you couldn't do nothing else, you know. But yeah, it was. I thought they were better times and everything didn't cost so much. I mean, you didn't have no money, but it didn't cost so much. And
Right.
fun was cheap. You made your own fun.
Yeah.
I always tell the story about another thing we did as later on in life. There was the Bolo was in Menominee, and it was a good restaurant. It was a nice restaurant, privately owned, but they had a Bolo steak, and it was this nice small steak, and you got a steak and the potatoes and a salad, and I don't remember just what it was, but you could go there, the two of us, for $25 and have a couple beers, and that was quite a Saturday night, you know.
Yeah.
Where now it probably costs that much to walk in the door. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like back then that it was all, everyone was tighter and kind of, everybody was doing the same thing.
Yeah, and nobody seemed to have any money, you know what I mean? Nobody was flaunting their money around because they didn't have any. But
New pickup trucks were pretty rare.
Yeah.
That was,
Yeah.
you know, and now it's, when you don't have a new pickup, you're kind of in the minority. And,
I think the toughest, you say about tough times, though, I think the toughest time, and I should have wrote that down, though, when interest went to 17% or 17 and a half, right? That was tough, but it didn't last too long, you know. That was the bigger thing.
were you with like PCA?
No, I was with credit union in Menominee, and I was 400,000 in debt. And I thought, well, I know one of my buddies said he was giving it up, and he was going to have an auction scheduled. But I went in and talked to him. I said, what do we do? They said, well, you got a lot of equity. We know you're a good worker. If you can pay the interest. So they took a fourth of my check all the time, and that would just cover the interest. And maybe a couple dollars went on the principal, but not any more than that. But we rewrote that. I would bet you in a year's time, I bet you we rewrote that 6 times. If it would go down a point, they'd call me up and
Yeah.
we rewrite their loan, you know. And well, a point made a heck of a difference.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
on that kind of money. But
Yeah.
that got back down to 8%. But what people don't understand about 8% then, yeah, but today that same debt would be 800,000 at least, you know. So,
Oh, more
so
than
you
that.
look at 8% accordingly. You know, it's, and like you talk about these tractors, but that was the going interest rate when you were buying these tractors, and that with John Deere was
Oh, yeah.
8%, but what, they were talking $20,000, you know. So
Right. Well, yeah, it was. You didn't have to worry about taxes because you had interest you were writing off, and
yeah,
you know, it
yeah,
it all comes down. If interest is super cheap, everything's going to be expensive. If you know,
yeah.
it's just in the times when it goes to that point that it changes, that it hurts a little bit, but. It's no different than if the corn price went to $3 and stayed at $3 for the next 10 years. We'd piss and moan about it for the first few years, but at the end of the 10 years, everything would adjust.
But you would see machinery would have to come down too, though, because
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
because you take last spring there when this thing went down, I tried to trade or buy a tractor, and you couldn't borrow any money for less than 8.5, 8 3/4,
Yeah.
you know, and you're looking at 150,000. Well, I thought I'm going to overhaul it, see what happens, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Well, and you like that tractor anyways.
yeah, I really do. I like the way they drive. The power is good, and everything comes natural for me, and
Yeah.
so.
Well, I think what I'll do, maybe I'll even do a little drive-by of the barn over there, because you got such a cool barn with that L shape, you know. And I can show them that. And
Yeah.
because there ain't a lot of these barns are going down. We don't, they're disappearing.
Yeah, all them nice barns that are going just falling down. It's really sad when you drive through the country. It's
Yeah, I know it, but yeah, it just won't look the same as it used to around here.
no,
But
no.
yeah, you never know. Maybe someday we'll fix small dairies or something again. I don't know. I think it was better, but I don't know. Farm's been getting bigger forever.
Right. Yeah. Well, but what I always say is to me, well, we'll pick on Steyer's down here. That's good operation as far as I know, but there was, 3 brothers, I think. Now they really went to a lot more cows, but at first there they had 100 or 400, whatever it was. And I'm thinking, well, if each one of you guys had that, think of the less headaches you'd have. But everybody's feeling is if we go this big, then we can get more time off.
Yeah.
But to me, they got to have workers, got to have so much more stuff.
Yeah.
So are they getting rid of their headaches? I don't know. Maybe they are. I wouldn't want any part of one.
No, the only thing I miss about milking cows is, well, chopping corn silage and
Okay.
milking in a tie stall barn on a winter day. That's about it.
Yeah.
So, well, I should let you get to your work done, and so sounds like you got somebody here.
Yeah, a guy was supposed to come early this morning and pull my well, but she says he's here now.
All right. Well, thanks, Mick.
Yep, thank you.
Got any advice for the younger farmers?
Well, if you like it, go for it, I guess. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah. An old guy always told me, if you stick with any one thing, you're going to make it go. So
Yeah.
don't quit halfway in. And
You gotta, if you really want to do it, you can do it.
yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks.
All right, thank you.
So here's Mick's barn. There's the silos that he talked about. But what's really cool about this barn is it's a L shape. They milked 100 cows, so that's a big barn for a tie stall barn. But yeah, it's L shaped, and there's 2 barn cleaners. There's one. That's a headland. So headlands were made not too far from here, probably about 45 minutes maybe. Ridgeland, Wisconsin. And, we're down here in the valley. We got all the tunnel fans. There's the other barn cleaner. So there's the L. Well, this is the L, but yeah, that's neat. Really is. I hope this barn stands. It'll stand for a long time. I take that back. That wasn't Ridgeland, that's Boyceville. But yeah, up north. So Boyceville is even closer. But what a cool place.